Hello, this is Allan Arkush with a German expressionist trailer from hell. Why? Because one of the founders of that movement, Fritz Lang, directed our film today, The Woman in the Window. But what kind of man was Fritz Lang? I think a good place to start is this famous scene from The Big Heat.
I suggest you shut your mouth. Where'd you go with Banyan?
Nowhere. He dropped me over the gaiety!
Oh, the gaiety. Oh, you pig. You lying pig. I'll fix you in your pretty face.
I'm profoundly fascinated by cruelty, fear, horror, and death. My films show my preoccupation with violence and the pathology of violence. Those words were spoken by the great filmmaker Fritz Lang, who made 49 movies, many of them masterpieces. Melodrama was his hook, but behind the melodrama was a commentary about the confusion with moral values and insanity. In the 1920s, he made his first masterpiece, Metropolis. Everyone's heard of Metropolis. They teach it in film school. It's the first dystopian view of the future. The sets were fantastic. The robots, the vision of a world that, well, it's one of the sacred monsters of cinema. After that, he made this movie that I had never heard before called Spion, Spies. And as I'm watching it, I say to myself, this is like a 1926 James Bond movie. The pace is incredible. The hero has all these weapons. The villain wants to take over the world with one of these giant plans, and the women in the movie are as dangerous as the men. There is no doubt in my mind that Ian Fleming saw this movie before he started writing the James Bond books. Well, in the 1930s, Lang made his first sound movie, M. It's a story of a serial killer of children. It's very, very difficult to watch. It's a masterpiece, and Peter Lorre's performance in it, when you see the movie, fill you with revulsion. That doesn't stop it from 90 years later, still leaving its mark on the audience when they watch it. Which brings us to 1933. And this is based on a story that, well, Lang used to tell, and it's probably true or probably mostly true, okay? In 1933, he was on top of the world. He had a movie out called The Testament of Dr. Mabuse, but it was banned and withdrawn by the Nazis, who recut the picture. Then he receives a message to meet Goebbels, Joseph Goebbels, in his office. Now, Joseph Goebbels was a virulent anti-Semite. He was also the minister of propaganda and Hitler's right-hand man, whose assignment was to exterminate the Jews. Walking into a meeting like this, can you imagine? But Lang was no shrinking flower, and he looked Goebbels right in the eye because he thought this meeting was about the editing and banning of Dr. Mabuse. But Goebbels caught him off guard by opening and saying, "You are Hitler's favorite filmmaker. He loves your work." Lang, sensing an opening, says, "Well, in that case, why don't you let me have Mabuse back so I can re-edit it?" Without missing a beat, Goebbels looks at him and says, "Hitler and I want you to become the head of all German film production. You will be the voice of the Third Reich." Lang tries not to show any emotion. He looked at his watch because he knew that he had to leave Germany as soon as possible. Goebbels looks at him and says, "Your mother's family has Jewish blood. If you take this job, and I urge you to, there is a chance you might be able to save them. I will give you your answer in the morning," says Lang. "Please thank the Fuhrer for this honor." He leaves the office, goes straight to the bank, withdraws all his money, goes to the train station, and he's in Paris by the next day. Lang doesn't return to Germany for 30 years, and he never saw his mother's family again. He settled in America and became one of the premier directors of the 30s and 40s and the 50s of crime dramas and film noirs. Work like Hangman Also Die, Ministry of Fear, Fury, You Only Live Once. My favorite, which is The Big Heat, and our trailer from hell, a story of lust and fear, The Woman in the Window.
I have no designs on you.
There's desire and sexual tension with a paranoid edge. Edward G. Robinson and Joan Bennett are at the nightmare center of Woman in the Window. It's not their first Lang movie, and Edward G. did not like Lang's strict controlling direction, but Joan Bennett adored his attention to every detail of her acting. She did her best work on this picture and the classic Scarlet Street.
In the district attorney's office, we see what happens to middle-aged men who try to act like coats. It's an idle flirtation, one drink too many.
I was warned against the siren call of adventure.
You mean you're afraid of me?
There are only 3 ways to deal with a blackmailer. You can pay him and pay him and pay him until you're penniless.
In America, Lang switched from the grand scale of his earlier work to noir interior films that often felt like living dreams. The Woman in the Window's dream structure is in that special category of movies that define pure cinema. There is no sentimentality and virtually no humor. Cruelty is commonplace. As Lang has said, I am profoundly fascinated by cruelty, fear, horror, and death. My films show my preoccupation with violence and the pathology of violence. For me, cinema is a vice. I love it intimately.